Welcome to a WalterFootball.com fantasy football mock draft. This is a half PPR format for July 30th. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm having a good day, and I'm looking forward to doing some half PPR. I'm one of the annoying people who decided to split the difference between PPR and standard in my fantasy league. So, looking forward to seeing if my strategy works in half PPR formats.
Yeah, this is our first half PPR mock draft, so I'm excited to see how it goes. I'm actually in one half PPR league, so I have to prepare for it. And I imagine that some people are, even though, it's usually standard or PPR or full PPR is more popular. But half PPR, we thought we would do it. So it looks like we got a full room, even though Team 10 doesn't really have a name. It's just blank. So it'll be interesting to see what unfolds. We were talking beforehand as we begin the draft here. We're both excited to see where Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes. Any predictions for that?
I think he's going to go like 7th or 8th. I think he goes right before your pick. I just think he's going to be like a hot commodity now because he's the unquestioned starter. He's going to catch a lot of passes, and he should have running room because teams are going to game plan against Patrick Mahomes. So I think that might happen. You think he goes around there, or you think he goes a little bit later?
So I moved this to the 9th spot because I wanted to see if I could get him at the 9th spot. I was kind of curious about it. I've had him in, I would say, the 4th or 5th round range before Damian Williams opted out. But now Edwards-Helaire is the unquestioned starter there. He's going to get most of the touches unless like Darwin Thompson blows up training camp, which I don't really see happening. So Edwards-Helaire should be in first round consideration. And I'm definitely going to consider him at 9, although there are some players I think I would take over him right now who are available. So kind of interested to see if he makes it there as we see Michael Thomas going off the board. Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs are two guys I would definitely take over Edwards-Helaire. Otherwise, I think I would take him at 9. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think 9's a perfect time to take him because you're going to get a solid player. I mean, he ran so well at LSU. He fits Andy Reid's system to a T, and he'll catch a lot of passes out of the backfield because players are opposing teams will be worried about Mahomes going deep. So if you design some screens for Edwards-Helaire, he's going to be in good shape. And it looks like you may have a chance to do it, and you will. He's on the clock. So is he your pick?
Yeah, so I was thinking I was going to take Josh Jacobs, but Shoes took him at 8. So I have Miles Sanders, Le'Veon Bell, and then Edwards-Helaire as the top 3 running backs. I think Edwards-Helaire has the most upside playing with Patrick Mahomes. Like how could he not? So I almost don't want to take him to see where he goes. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to take him just for that reason. I would say that I would take him here in normal circumstances, but I want to see where he's drafted. So I'm going to take Miles Sanders instead. But although if he comes back to me in the 2nd round, I'm definitely going to take him.
Yeah, I'm wondering where he's going to go too, because it'll be interesting to see if people are following the rankings here, which still don't appear to have accounted for the Williams opt-out, which is fair. But there he goes, number 10.
Number 10, yeah. So that ended up being would have been a good pick if I took him at 9, just based on that value. I think he definitely belongs in the 1st round, just based on his talent, his upside. The circumstances he's in, he's going to get all the touches. So yeah, there we go. There are our first questions answered. I think it's a great pick by Team 10.
Yeah, no, I think it is too. And I will say this: if I had Alvin Kamara on the board with Clyde Edwards-Helaire instead of Ezekiel Elliott on the board, because Derrick Henry went 3rd overall, I may have considered going with Edwards-Helaire. I know that's crazy to say. I think Kamara is more proven, and that's why I would probably end up going with him. But Edwards-Helaire would be in the back of my mind just because I think he has so much upside and potential in that offense, and I think he's going to catch a ton of passes. So I'm a lot more bullish on him than I was just a few weeks ago. So we'll see if I do anything crazy on my actual draft day and try to get him. But I think for now, I'm going to be sticking in the 4th spot and taking either Elliott or Kamara like I did this time around with Elliott.
Do you have any idea of how many passes he might catch this year? I was kind of debating that last night when I was updating my rankings. I settled in it, I believe 55 or 56, but I thought about going higher than that. Like, do you have any estimate for that?
I think 55, that range, I think is the smart bet. I think probably in like the best case scenario, he could probably catch 70 passes. I think that's probably his ceiling, maybe a tiny bit higher. Because, as good as Patrick Mahomes is getting the ball down the field, if teams are playing deep, there's going to open up a lot of underneath routes for Edwards-Helaire to run. And I think he's going to be a good route runner at the next level. So we'll see what he ultimately ends up doing. But I think somewhere between 50 and 60 is probably what I'd project, with 75 being the best case scenario.
Yeah, I think you can get that high. I went with Aaron Jones with my second pick. I wonder if someone else would have been available had I taken Edwards-Helaire, and then I suppose Team 10 might have taken Miles Sanders, so it probably wouldn't have been any different. I considered Le'Veon Bell as well, in addition to Aaron Jones, but I was kind of thinking that with the Jamal Adams trade, I think there might be some dissension in the Jets locker room because everyone hates Adam Gase, and I've been higher on Le'Veon Bell recently, but given the Jamal Adams trade, I think there might be a revolt against Adam Gase at some point this year, and everyone might quit. So I think that there's a chance late in the year that the Jets are just awful, and then that just really affects Le'Veon Bell. What do you think about that theory?
I could absolutely see that. We see teams quit on incompetent coaches, not all the time, but enough that it's a feasible possibility for New York, because Jamal Adams is gone. That defense isn't going to be very good. So another aspect to keep in mind is they may not be able to run the ball a lot. And, Bell will catch balls out of the backfield for sure, but I don't think he can survive fantasy-wise only on that. So I think the combination of factors surrounding the Jets and Bell would lead me to downgrade him a bit. Like, if he was still on the board here coming to my late second round pick, I probably would at least consider him. But, he may not be my option over some of the other guys still on the board here.
Okay, so you're about to be on the clock right after a team name. Very creative team name for the Team 5. What are you thinking for your next pick? Are you probably going to target a running back?
Yeah, I'm still going with running backs. I would have considered Devin Singletary, but he came off the board here. In a half-point PPR league, I really like Austin Eckler at this point. I'm kind of surprised he's still on the board. He's the unquestioned lead back in Los Angeles, and, Justin Jackson may take some snaps for him, or maybe Josh Kelly will do it. But no matter what, Eckler's going to catch a lot of passes. I think that's valuable in half-point PPR leagues. And, between the tackles, he was good too. He averaged a lot of yards per carry. There's just questions about whether or not, with his slighter build, can he hold a full workload. So, but I'm comfortable taking a chance on it at this point because I have Zeke, who can definitely handle a full workload, and Eckler, who at the very least will catch a lot of passes. So I'm excited to get him at this point. I did not expect him to still be on the board. So there were a couple other guys I might have considered, but I think ultimately Eckler was my best choice there.
Yeah, I think he's a great pick in PPR or half PPR. If this were standard, I would take him later in the third round at some point. But yeah, in late second for half PPR, I think is a good spot to take him. So some people might notice that both your top two backs have week 10 buys. So like someone may point that out. I don't think it's a big deal. I really don't look at bye weeks when I'm drafting. I think you just should take the best available player. Now, like if you're torn between two guys, maybe you can use that as a tiebreaker. But I really don't care at all about the bye weeks.
Yeah, I actually like stacking bye weeks because then you're basically like 1 week, you're just kind of punting. You're saying, all right, week 10, I'm going to be a little bit thin at running back, but it's better than the, every week you have one player. Like if you have good depth, that's one thing, but I feel like especially this year, it's good to just be like, all right, well, I'm just going to be without these guys week 10, and then I could figure stuff out. Looks like I'm on the clock again, and another running back was not taken at the 6 picks after. We had 2 receivers, 2 tight ends, and 2 quarterbacks. So I think that's a little bit early for non-running back positions for me. Receivers are fine at that point, but at this point, I'm going to take another running back. It's tough. I'm having trouble choosing between Todd Gurley and Kareem Hunt. I think I'm probably going to go with Gurley because he's the surefire leader in Atlanta in the backfield. And I know he has knee issues, but he's going to get touchdown opportunities. Even like he'll remind me a little bit of late career Michael Turner and Steven Jackson in Atlanta. He may not get a ton of yards, but he's going to get touchdowns and he's going to get red zone touches. So that's what I care about at this point.
Yeah, another week 10 bye running back. So that's definitely fine. I think Gurley is a great pick there in the third round. There are a couple running backs still available that I'm considering at my pick. We'll see if they get to my pick. There is one off the board, Melvin Gordon. I'm also looking at Chris Carson as a potential pick in the third round. And then you go down a little bit. They have Kareem Hunt, David Johnson, Deandre Swift, James Conner. I think I can get one of those guys in the fourth round. So if Chris Carson's gone, I think I'm going with looks like Mike Evans is still available somehow. Like Chris Godwin went with the final pick in the second round. And Mike Evans is still available. So Chris Carson's off the board, and there goes Mike Evans. So this is great. Like I think you don't want this to happen in a real draft, but it's nice to have these scenarios in practice. So I mentioned that there are three running backs I like: Hunt, Johnson, and Swift. And I think that there's a decent chance one gets to me. But I have one player ranked above them all, and that's Cortland Sutton. And I think Sutton's going to have a huge year. He was great in the second half last year, with especially when Drew Lock came to be the starter. So I think Sutton is, you could have a monster 2020 season. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see if one of those running backs falls to me.
Yeah, and it looks like you may have started a baby run on wide receivers there. I like the Sutton pick. Just to touch on Melvin Gordon, I considered him with my pick as well. But for some reason, I'm just like very scared of the Denver backfield because I really like Phillip Lindsay. And I think Melvin Gordon and him are going to share carries and probably both be fantasy relevant. But in my mind, I would rather get Phillip Lindsay in like the seventh round than spend a pick in the second or third round on Melvin Gordon. Now, I might end up being wrong about that, but I was just kind of looking for volume guys. That's why I went with Gurley. But Gordon's a good pick. I feel like every pick from my Todd Gurley pick through your Cortland Sutton pick was really, really strong. And I think part of that had to do with the quarterbacks and tight ends going early.
Yeah, well, the only picks I don't like are made by the 12th team, team 498. Adam Thielen, he's not going to be playing in the slot with Justin Jefferson there. And that's his third receiver already. Like, he hasn't taken a running back. Zach Ertz with his fourth pick. I mean, I love Ertz as a player, but, tight ends are so deep that you can just get one late. I think that you should pass on the tight ends. So he hasn't taken a running back in the first 4 rounds. I'm interested to see how his team's going to pan out. And, like, I don't want to say like he's a bad drafter or anything. Like maybe he's just trying stuff out to see how things pan out, which is something you should do in mock drafts for sure. So I'm interested to see what happens with his team. I'm on the clock again, and 2 of the running backs I mentioned earlier, David Johnson and Deandre Swift, are both available. I have I think both have major upside. Like if David Johnson stays healthy, he could have a huge season. And Swift, we'll see if he becomes the starter. And if he does, I think he's going to have a great year. I have David Johnson ranked a little bit higher, so I'm going to take him, but it's pretty close. Do you have any like lean as far as those 2 players?
I probably would lean Johnson too, just because, we've seen what Johnson can do at the NFL level when healthy. We haven't seen it with Swift yet. And I think Swift eventually emerges as the starter, but, Kerryon Johnson is there to take at least a little bit of his potential touches away. I don't think, off the top of my head, Houston has Duke Johnson, who's more of a receiving back to fill in for David Johnson. So I like Johnson more there. I like your running back group overall. Having Sanders, Jones, and Johnson, I think is a solid group. And, had you not taken Sanders and gone Edwards-Helaire, I think it's a solid group either way too. Taking 3 running backs in the first few rounds is really the way to go this year, as we've discussed numerous times on this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Running backs are so thin this year. It's something you really have to do, I think. And it would have been nice if I took Edwards-Helaire if this were a real team, and I had David Johnson as well, because the Chiefs and the Texans play on the opening night. So I would have had both my starting running back, or I guess my number 1 running back and my flex going at the same time on that like single game night. So that would have been fun at least. But yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying about David Johnson not having to share the workload with anyone. They traded Hopkins for him, so they definitely have big plans for him, and you're on the clock.
Okay, so I've been going running back the first 4 rounds, and I'm going to do it again. One of my favorite sleepers at the positions on the board, Darius Geis from Washington. Like Gurley, he has some knee injury concerns, just injury concerns overall. But with this group of 4 running backs, I'm really confident in my depth at the position, and I've been able to get receivers. We've done drafts where I didn't draft a receiver until the 8th or 9th round, and I've been fine, or at least had enough depth to get by at the position. So I'm pretty confident in this group now. I think Geis was one of the better players left. And now I'll start really shifting my focus to the receiver position and trying to get some guys who catch a lot of passes this upcoming year.
Yeah, I mean, people looking at a fantasy mock draft for the first time, I mean, it's the end of July, so some people might be getting into it right now, and they see you take 4 running backs, and they're like, I don't know about this guy taking 4 running backs in the first 4 rounds, but it is definitely a viable strategy this year, considering how thin the position is. Like, once you get past the first 4 rounds, it is pretty brutal. So I think it's definitely something that you should consider doing, as long as you're not reaching or anything. So I definitely like that. And I'm looking at like the top 20 players I have available right now. Only 3 are running backs, and I'm not crazy about 2 of them. So I definitely like what you did there.
Yeah, and I've lucked out a little bit too, because the people beyond me outside of the first round, at least to the left side of me, so the first 3 teams that have drafted, keep taking like receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks. They seem to be going with the 1 running back strategy and then filling out everywhere else. So I was able to get some running backs I didn't think would be on the board. So that's definitely helped me as well. Now I'm on the clock again. Now I'm going to officially shift to the receiver position. Favorite guy on the board at this point is A.J. Brown from Tennessee. He was super explosive and dynamic as a rookie. I think he's going to continue to be Ryan Tannehill's favorite receiver, catch a ton of passes. As a number 1 receiver for me, I'm very confident with him. And I feel that way about a lot of the second-year players, but A.J. Brown, I think, is my favorite of those guys just because his sheer ability to turn everything he touches into a big gain just entices me enough to take him here.
I love AJ Brown. I was rewatching the 2019 season. I'm almost done. I'm like halfway through week 16. I've been halfway through week 16 for like 3 weeks. So I don't know why I just can't finish it, but he was better than I remember him being, and I remember him being very good. He was excellent last year, and like he's just a monster. I think he's gonna have a great year. I wish he were on a team that threw more. Like Tennessee is just a run first team, but he's such a good receiver that he can overcome that and just be a star. So I like that as him being the number 1 receiver for you. I also like the DJ Moore pick made right after that. He was someone I was going to consider with my pick, and I mentioned this guy before. Deandre Swift is, unless I'm missing something, he's still available, I believe. Right here, yeah, he's still available. So I would have taken him in the 4th round, and now he's available to me in the 5th. I think that's a steal. I think he's a better player than Edwards-Helaire. Now, obviously, I'd rather have Edwards-Helaire considering the situation he's in. But Swift in the 5th round, I think is a steal.
Yeah, I can't believe he got back to you, because I was considering him over Darius Geis, but I went with the higher ceiling player since I already had pretty high floor guys with my first 3 picks. I think Geis' ceiling being higher just because of the way Scott Turner uses running backs in his offense as pass catchers, and Swift is still going to have to battle for that running back job with Kerryon Johnson. I think Swift ultimately emerges as the leader there. I just think it might take some time just because of the shortened offseason. But getting him in the 5th round as your 4th running back, that's a no-brainer to me. I would have taken him over Raheem Mostert or David Montgomery in the 5th round. Not that I have a ton of problems with those guys because they are at least lead backs, but I'm surprised they came off the board before Swift.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising. Like I said, I would have considered him in the 4th round, so I'm very happy to get him here. And I only have 1 receiver on my roster so far, but looking at the top 20 players I have available on my big board right now, most of them are receivers. So I'm going to get one of them here. I think it's going to be either Robert Woods or Devonte Parker, or maybe AJ Green. So it's definitely going to be one of those 3. And then I think one of the other receivers will fall to me. One of the other highly ranked receivers I think will fall to me in the 7th round. So I'm going to take Looks like Robert Woods just went. I love Robert Woods. He's the number one receiver with the Rams. I don't know why Cooper Kupp's going ahead of him, but Robert Woods is the guy you want to have as far as a receiver is concerned. Devonte Parker, he has a low floor. I mean, we've seen it before. He struggled early in Miami, but that was with Adam Gase. And I think he made a huge progression in his career last year now that he was without Adam Gase. And we saw his potential, especially in the second half of the year. He was amazing. Like, it was so difficult to stop him. He single-handedly won some games for the Dolphins. I remember the Eagles game. The Eagles had no answer for him. And there were some other games like that. And he was playing with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and we'll see if Tua plays. I still have my doubts, but if Tua plays, that's an upgraded quarterback, and Parker could be another monster this year if he's motivated. So I love the upside with him in the 6th round.
Yeah, I can't believe he went in the 6th and Cooper Kupp went in the late 4th. Like, I feel like those values should be flip-flopped there. I also want to point out Deebo Samuel came off the board in the 6th round, which could either end up being a complete steal or could end up kind of biting you a little bit if he doesn't start the season on the field. But I still like the value there. I would have targeted him in the 7th round probably, but I'm definitely happy with what's on the board for me as my next pick comes up, at least in terms of receivers I have that can be picked.
Yeah, Deebo is definitely someone who's going to consider it. Like, let's just say Devonte Parker was off the board. It was going to be AJ Green and then Deebo. So, yeah, it's great value, and you're on the clock right now.
Yeah, so I was hoping Michael Gallup would get to me. I wanted either Gallup, Samuel, or Terry McLaurin. So they're all off the board. So I'm going to swing for the fences here. I'm going to go with Will Fuller. He's the number one receiver in Houston. He can't stay healthy, but when he's on the field, he's super productive. So I only have to start 2 receivers every week. I could start Brown and Fuller until Fuller gets banged up, and then I'll draft some safer receivers later on and really just bolster my receiving core. But I feel like between those top 2 guys, I have enough to get by, especially with the group of running backs I have.
Yeah, Will Fuller was the top receiver available on my board, so I definitely love the pick. He was going to be my pick if he made it back to me, so I guess that really didn't stand a chance. And it looks like teams 1 and 2 are kind of on auto draft right now, so I don't think we need to talk about them after the draft. But I think overall this group that we're drafting with, or it looks like team 1 is just on auto draft. It looks like this group overall that we're drafting with is pretty sharp. I think they've made a lot of great picks, and outside of what Team 12 has done, it's not really it's not much you can criticize. I don't think.
Yeah, and I think Team 12 is trying out the zero RB strategy early on, which I tested early in the offseason and determined it doesn't work at all. But you kind of need to experiment with it to see what happens. And it looks like they're going to end up with Kerryon Johnson as their top running back, which is far from ideal. So that'll probably have them shy away from going receiver, at least moving forward. But that said, their top 2 receivers they ended up with were solid. The next 3 picks they made, I probably wouldn't have done. But yeah, generally speaking, the teams picking in the middle have made a number of sharp picks and taken guys that I've really wanted ahead of where I thought they were going to go.
And you're up again.
Okay, so I could take another receiver here, but I actually like some of the running backs on the board. This is where I'm going to take Phillip Lindsay. I mentioned it earlier. I think him and Melvin Gordon are both going to factor into the backfield there. So I'm grabbing him as my 5th running back at this point. I'll continue to build up depth on receiver as we go along, but I don't think I'm going to get another chance to pick Lindsay. So at this point, I'll take a chance on that. And there are plenty of later round receivers that I could easily pick and be comfortable with being on my team.
Yeah, just based on talent, Lindsay is a great pick here. We'll see what the running back rotation is. I think that's going to be very interesting to see what Denver does with those 2 guys. It's tough to project because they're both so talented, and it's not like they paid Melvin Gordon like a huge load of money. It was less money than I thought he would get. So it's not like they're kind of motivated to give him more workload. If Lindsay outperforms him in practice and training camp, I could see him, really eating into that workload. So I guess we'll see what happens. I am on the clock right now after Deshaun Watson and Sony Michel just went. Let's see. I like some of the receivers here. So I only have two. So I think I need another one. There are a couple of running backs who are intriguing as well. I hope one of them falls back down to me. One receiver I've been talking up a lot is let's see if he's still available. Darry Slayton. Darry Slayton was amazing last year with the Giants in his rookie year. In the second half of the year, like he really took off and had a great finish to the season. And I think with Daniel Jones having more experience, I feel like that'll just help him develop even more. So I like getting Slayton as my third receiver. Jaken Dobbins, by the way, was one of the running backs I was considering. I think last week in our mock draft, Kenny took him in the 4th round, I want to say. And it seemed like, for me, a round too early, but I think Dobbins ultimately could have the production that would meet like a 4th round pick or even a 3rd round pick. So I'm definitely a fan of that selection.
Yeah, no, I like that one too. I like your Slayton selection a lot, though, because I was considering him, but I went with Lindsey because I knew I wouldn't have a chance at him. Was hoping Slayton would make it back to me, but as expected, you were all over that. So props to you for taking one of my guys who really was your guy. So I stole him from you. So credit to you for identifying Slayton.
Nice. Well, the fact that I've talked him up so much this summer means that I'm not going to get him in any of my leagues. That's just how it works. And whatever, that's fine. So one of the other running backs I was looking at, Damian Williams, by the way, not one of them. I guess we were talking about Team 12 being trying this strategy, but it looks like he's on auto draft. So maybe he's not doing that. Alexander Madison. So there's been some talk about Dalvin Cook reporting to camp. Hasn't happened yet. There have been some reports refuting that. So it still may not happen. And I think ultimately there's a decent chance that he could play in week 1. We'll see. But there is a chance that he doesn't, first of all. And second, Dalvin Cook has never made it through a whole season. And I don't see why that would change. So Madison is someone I think I probably could start at some point. And he's my fifth running back. So it's not like I really need that to happen.
Yeah, okay, so now I'm annoyed because I wanted Madison or Clayton with my next pick. So I'm going to have to scramble. But yeah, no, that means you've made a couple of good picks. I need receiving talent. I really don't need another running back at this point. I'm actually kind of surprised Julian Edelman is still on the board. So I'm going to take him in the 8th round. He's very consistent. I know he wasn't great last year, but he was dealing with like a bad shoulder injury and playing with one arm. So having him as kind of the counterpart to Will Fuller's explosive Julian Edelman will always catch passes. I feel like that's pretty good. And Edelman should endear himself to Newton right away. And if not, I'll just have one of the other many depth receivers I draft fill in for him.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of my fourth cousin being drafted. So I like the pick, especially in half-PPR. So you're up again.
Okay, so I want to go with the safer pick here. So I'm going to take Marvin Jones, perennially underrated in Detroit. If Matthew Stafford is healthy, he will be the number 2 receiver across from Kenny Golladay, should catch a lot of passes. And, he generally just turns them into yardages. He's just very consistent. So having him as a 4th receiver, I will take that. I feel like my receiving core has some good upside with the first 2 guys I picked. And now I'm taking safer guys because I just need proven contributors. But I'm ultimately happy with how my team's turning out for sure.
Yeah, I like your team. Another thing about Marvin Jones, and this is something we discussed in a previous mock draft, is that if the Lions do well, Marvin Jones is going to have a good year. If the Lions do poorly and Stafford's injured, there's a decent chance Marvin Jones is going to be traded because he's in his contract year, and there's no reason to keep him around. So I think he could end up going to another team. All right, looks like. I hope I didn't miss this guy being chosen. I may have. No, CeeDee Lamb is still available. I find that kind of amazing for him to be available in the 9th round. I know he's just a rookie, but we've seen rookie receivers in recent years have more success because the offenses translate more. The college offenses translate more to the NFL, and that's such a highly explosive offense that CeeDee Lamb could come in right away and be effective. And given that Amari Cooper fades down the stretch, we've seen it time and again. He does that. There's a decent chance CeeDee Lamb has a great finish to his rookie year.
Yeah, and I was actually hoping you would take CeeDee Lamb in the 7th round because I know you like him a lot instead of Darry Slayton. Lamb wasn't really on my radar because I have Ezekiel Elliott, but I probably would have considered him in the 8th or 9th round had Edelman and Jones not been there. So I think that gives you another guy with immense upside. Your receiving core looks really good. Your running back group is really strong as well. So, if you could add a tight end and a quarterback that fit in well, I think you'll be in pretty good shape with this team.
Yeah, if I add a quarterback or a tight end, as I discussed before, I like playing the matchups there. So it's not a guarantee that I draft a quarterback or a tight end in my real leagues, but we are doing this because you had the 4th pick in your half-PPR real league. So I'm going to actually adhere to your rules and draft the full roster. So that's something I'll be doing in this draft.
Okay, thank you for indulging me as a commissioner and making sure that I get my way, because when I don't, I get upset sometimes.
Yeah, it's weird how there's such a disparity. We actually one of my commissioners, Drew, who might be listening to this, he enforces that as well. Like, everyone has to draft the full roster, and every single year I try to get away with it, and I kind of under the radar, there's low key, just not draft either a kicker or defense. And then sometimes he finds it after the draft and he makes me change my final pick. So shout out to Drew, but sometimes he doesn't find it and I get away with it. Okay. Anthony Miller is, I like Miller a lot. In the second half of the year in 2019, his production took off exponentially, and we found out that his receiver coach talked about this, that he really improved his workout regimen in the second half of the year, and that kind of was the catalyst for him going off. And apparently he's been doing the same thing this offseason, so I think that could translate into big time production in the season coming up. The one concern I have with Miller is that the Bears might just be one of the worst teams in the NFL. Okay, so it looks like you took Golden Tate. Do you want to discuss that?
Yeah, so I wanted one of the Giants receivers between Slayton, Shepard, and Tate. I feel like they have a really solid receiving core, and they're being undervalued a bit because people don't like Daniel Jones enough. Tate was the one left. He's, again, another safe pick, a guy who's definitely going to produce. And it looks like I'm on the clock again already. So I'll go ahead and take Daniel Jones. I like having a quarterback who pairs with one of my receivers, and Daniel Jones is probably the best of the available quarterbacks that would pair with one of them. So I have Jones and Tate, so could have double points anytime they're in the lineup together. I could have gone with Cam Newton too to pair with Julian Edelman, but I didn't ultimately do that. But I may think about it depending on how Cam looks in camp, because matchup with the Dolphins in week 1 is pretty enticing to me.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. The Dolphins have great corners, but they had no pass rush at all. So I think Cam Newton could have a great game despite the corners. It looks like the picks are fast, and it looks like a lot of the sleepers I like are being chosen. Deshaun Jackson went right after my Miller pick. We have Lazard. He's another guy I like late. It's pretty slim pickings here. So we'll see if I can find someone I like. So Justin Jefferson, I don't think I've drafted him yet, or maybe I have in one of our mocks. But as I said before, Justin Jefferson is going to be playing the slot in Minnesota, and Kirk Cousins loves throwing to the slot. He's another rookie receiver, but like I said, rookie receivers have come on lately and have gotten good at developing quickly for the NFL. And Jefferson is someone I like a lot. He was under consideration for Denver's pick at 15. If Judy wasn't there, it sounds like they would have taken Jefferson. So teams think highly of him. At least a couple teams did. And in that offense, if Dalvin Cook's out, they're gonna have to throw more. especially with Michael Pierce out, the defense isn't going to be as strong. So they might be in more deficits, which means Jefferson's going to see more targets. So I kind of like him as a flyer in the 11th round or 12th round.
Yeah, I like him too. I think he ended up on the COVID list recently. So that means he either tested positive for the virus or was exposed to someone with the virus. So that may just take him out of camp exercises early on, but he still has enough talent that as your sixth receiver, he's well worth taking a shot on. But I do think that's why he fell in this mock draft just a little bit, because he had gone as high as the 7th round, I think, in one of our mocks, which was too high, but 11th round is a really good value for him.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, the COVID list thing is, if that occurred in the middle of August, I'd be more concerned. But it's just the beginning of training camp right now. He should be back soon enough. So I think it's fine. There's another sleeper I like, Darrynton Evans. So Derrick Henry obviously is a great running back, but he saw almost 400 touches last year, and there's been a bad history of running backs who see that many touches. Their production tends to decline the following year, either because they're fatigued or they get injured. And I think there's a decent chance Henry misses some games in 2020. And Evans is a rookie running back I kind of like. I like him coming out of school. I think he's a decent guy to draft in the later rounds, and you're on the clock again.
Yeah, I'm taking another receiver because, again, the receiver value late is just really, really good. So Curtis Samuel's my guy at this point. Samuel's kind of gone under the radar. The Panthers signed Robbie Anderson, and everyone's more all over Anderson than Samuel. But Samuel was solid last year. I mean, he wasn't anything great, but he got the job done. He had some productive fantasy outings and was consistent. So as my 6th receiver, I like him a lot, and I could play him in matchups. And I feel like with Teddy Bridgewater there, he's going to be throwing short a whole lot, and they'll be getting it into his hands.
Yeah, for sure. And you're up again.
Oh, already? Oh, that was fast. Okay. I need a tight end now. I guess I will go with Gronk, because why not?
Why not? He could catch a lot of touchdowns. So
I mean, he's the greatest tight end in NFL history, and he's on the board in the 13th round. Maybe if this was a real league, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't end up starting Gronk week 1 against the Saints. I'd have to think about it. But at this point, looking at the other options available, I could have considered Jack Doyle. I like him. I like Hayden Hurst a little in Atlanta too, but I think he was a little overhyped early in the offseason, but he's kind of, fallen back to the respectable late round chance guy now. So any of those 3 guys would have been great, but I just love Gronk's ceiling, so I'll go with him at 13.
So this is my first non-running back, non-receiver, and I thought that was going to be very impressive, but Shoes, Team 8, also has gone for the same strategy right before this pick. So he went with a tight end as his first non-running back, non-quarterback. I'm going to go with a quarterback as my first non-running back, non-receiver I meant earlier. Jared Goff is, I feel like I've drafted Jared Goff in every single mock draft we've done. I don't like Jared Goff very much. I think he's an overrated player, or maybe he was an overrated player. I think people have learned that he's not as good as his stats indicated in the past. But I love playing matchups as a quarterback, and Jared Goff is one of the easiest matchups in week 1 against Dallas. Dallas lost Robert Quinn as a pass rusher, so they only have DeMarcus Lawrence. They have a defensive backfield that lost Byron Jones, their top cornerback, and their safeties are just okay. So I think Jared Goff, especially on a Sunday night on the West Coast, prime time, I think that game could be like 34-31, and Jared Goff throws for like 3 or 4 touchdowns, and then I could just dump him in week 2 or maybe week 3 after he plays the Eagles.
Yeah, I definitely think Jared Goff's a good streamer play. I mean, you're talking about a quarterback you're drafting in the 13th round, and he could end up being a top 10 play the first week of the season. So that's solid overall, because it lets you just go with running backs and receivers heavy early on. So I like that philosophy. I've got to reassess my quarterback situation, because I often will just pick whichever guy I have ranked higher for the season, but I may think of going more matchup based, especially this year, where there are a lot of defenses that you can kind of exploit in week 1 with quarterbacks that may not be on the draft radar.
Yeah, so I agree. And I just went with my tight end in round 14, Hayden Hurst. I think in Atlanta's offense, Hurst could really go off. He struggled in Baltimore, but he's a former first-round pick. He has talent, and we saw what Austin Hooper did in Atlanta. I don't think Austin Hooper is that great of a talent, so I think Hurst can maybe duplicate that. And you're on the clock.
Yeah, so someone took the Colts defense. I was very, very unprepared for that. So I am going to go with what off the top of my head I think is the best defense, and it's the Chargers. They just get a lot of sacks. They have a lot of talent in the secondary. If they had a good offense, I think they'd be considered playoff favorites. If not, and if they weren't in the Chiefs division, they could be considered division favorites. But yeah, I'll go with them as the defense in the 14th round. I'm probably going to look at who they're playing and be like, that's terrible. Why would I play them against them? But no, it's the Bengals. I'm okay with that. Yeah,
it's a good first week matchup. Obviously, they're going to be better with Joe Burrow, but that offensive line is still a unit I don't trust. So yeah, it's a good pick. So you're up again.
Okay, number one rule of fantasy: always draft the Falcons kicker because they play half their games in a dome stadium.
That's true. And if they suddenly change the rules where you get points for onside recoveries, which I think should be, I would argue that should be something like maybe like 1 or 2 points. In the unlikely event that happens, you'll get some points from Young Oiku.
Yeah, there's another strategy I like with kickers too. It's just whatever team your quarterback is on, have your kicker on that team. So if they have a drive that stalls out, you still get points from it. It just feels better. Basically, you're getting half points if they score a touchdown. So kickers are unpredictable, though. So my strategies are just like ways that make me feel better about having to have kickers on the team.
Jacob, I screwed up. I said I was going to draft the full roster, and I forgot that this is 15 rounds instead of 16. So I apologize. So I'm going to let you decide whether I'd take a kicker or a defense in the 15th round.
I want you to take a kicker. And also, I completely forgive you because I also was having trouble counting how many guys I needed to get to the exact full roster. And I think I almost miscounted too.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I don't know why it's 15 rounds. So I mentioned that in Drew's league, he makes you take a kicker. Last year, I took a kicker who was not in the league. So I'm looking at these kickers, and they all seem to be in the league. Although Aldrick Rosas just got cut. So I'm going to draft him. I have a good feeling about him.
Hypothetically, I should have drafted the Giants kicker because I have Daniel Jones, but Chandler Catanzaro wasn't on this list. So I could have taken Aldrick Rosas and really stolen your thunder there because he was the Giants kicker up until a day ago.
Nothing more tilting than the kicker you want being drafted right in front of you. I remember those days back when I used to draft kickers, and then you're sweating it out. Like it's so weird that you don't care about kickers until the final round, and then the kicker you want is taken one pick ahead of yours, and like you feel so salty. And it's like, and if you think about it, if you really think about it, you're like, why would I care about this? It's so stupid.
Yeah, it is weird how much like once you get to that last round, you're like, I need the kicker I've been preparing to draft this whole time, or it just throws you off.
Well, I was in a league once, also Drew's league, by the way. Some guy drafted Steven Gostkowski in the 6th round one year. So he definitely got the kicker he wanted. All right. Do you want to talk about your team?
Yeah, I think this is kind of standard what my team's been looking like a lot during these drafts. I think my running backs are strong, spending the first 4 picks at the position. Week 10, it may end up being a weakness if I can't get someone off waivers that works out, if Geis and Lindsey don't pan out. But ultimately, I'm pretty strong in that running back room with Ezekiel Elliott, Eckler, Gurley, Geis, and Lindsey. Receivers, I'm confident in again. I think you can wait on receivers and still get good guys. Brown as a number 1 is great. Fuller has a ton of upside. Edelman, Jones, and Tate are all very consistent veterans, and Samuel was consistent last year and fits the offense well in Carolina. Daniel Jones and Rob Gronkowski were the best players available at the positions of quarterback and tight end, the 11th and 13th. And then, defense and kicker. Chargers have a good matchup, thankfully, because I took them blindly. But and Young Oiku is a good kicker. So I would be very confident in this team. I think this is the strategy I'm going to follow, going running back the first 4 rounds unless an insane receiver value falls to me. And I maybe should have considered taking Mike Evans with my 3rd round pick instead of Todd Gurley, and may do that on draft day. But I think 4 running backs in the first 5 rounds is definitely in my future this year.
I like the Gurley pick over Evans. I would have picked Gurley over Evans for sure. I know that Evans is is definitely safer because you never know with Gurley's knees. But considering how thin running back is, I think you made the right choice. Although it is pretty close. I could definitely see the argument for Evans over Gurley. With my draft, the first pick should be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If you missed it, I drafted Sanders because I wanted to see where Edwards-Helaire would go. So I would have taken Edwards-Helaire at 9 overall. So pairing with Aaron Jones. And by the way, Jones, I forgot to write this on the site. Jones should get a stock up because Michael Pierce, both Michael Pierce and Eddie Goldman, two big run stuffers in the division, are both opting out. So there's 4 easier matchups throughout the year for Aaron Jones. So, maybe 3. I don't know what the week 17 opponent is. So at least 3 easier matchups for Jones. So I like Jones a lot more now, especially as a second running back. He could easily be a first running back if you're drafting super late in the first round. And then David Johnson, Deandre Swift, 2 guys who have low floors because of their circumstances, but they also have a big upside. Same thing with Madison. If Dalvin Cook gets injured, Madison suddenly becomes an RB2. So I like that pick in the 8th round. And then my receiving core, I only took 1 in the first 5 rounds. Cortland Sutton, I think he's going to have a big year. And then Parker, Slayton, Lamb, and then Jefferson are all young. I guess not so much Parker, but Slayton, Lamb, and Jefferson are all young receivers. I think 2 of them. I'm confident 2 of them will do well this year. And then we have Parker, who had a big year last year, and Anthony Miller, who finished strong last year as well. I talked about him before. So I like my receiving core for. Considering I didn't get an elite stud or anything. And then Jared Goff is a matchup play. Hayden Hurst, I guess you can say he's a matchup play as well. Although I think you can probably play him considering that he's in Atlanta's offense. And then my kicker, who's not on a team, is par for the course there. So I like my team overall. If this were a real draft, I'd be pretty happy about it. Anything else stand out from this draft? Well, let's look at Team 12 quickly because they went with the no running back strategy until round 6. And looks like the running backs, Kerryon Johnson, who may not have a job. Damian Williams definitely doesn't have a job. We have Keyshawn Vaughn, who may not get the carries. And then Tony Pollard, you need Elliott to go down. He needs your running back to go down. So what are your thoughts on that team?
Yeah, that team, the running backs room is just so weak. And they drafted 2 quarterbacks in the first 8 rounds. It just didn't make sense to do that. I think this team is a good case study of, like, on paper, like, you think, getting Devonte Adams and DeAndre Hopkins, my receiving core is going to be stacked. I'll be able to make do at running back. But if you're going to do that, you really need to spend your 3rd, 4th, and 5th round picks on running back. You just can't go 0 running back strategy this year. It just doesn't work out. And as good as the rest of their roster is, this would be a team that would face plant pretty early just because they wouldn't be able to get many, if any, points out of running backs.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another interesting team, or actually 2 other interesting teams, are Team 2 and Sheesh, the 3rd team. They also went running back light. As you see with Team 2, they went with Saquon Barkley, and then they didn't draft another running back until round 8. And then Sheesh took Derrick Henry and didn't go running back until round 6 with Cam Akers and then James White. I wanted to get your opinion on these teams. It looks like, you could look at Team 2's receiving core. Looks pretty great. And then George Kittle. But who's this running back too? Jordan Howard, who may not start, and you have Zach Moss, who needs Singletary to get hurt, or Boston Scott, who needs Miles Sanders to get hurt. It looks pretty bleak there. And it's not like he doesn't even have an elite receiver. Like, I love Galladay, I love Juju, I love Beckham, but like none of those. I guess you could say like Galladay could be a receiver 1 and maybe Juju if Roethlisberger is healthy, but like it's not like he got Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill, or Julio Jones,
Yeah, that's a tough team to evaluate because on paper, I like a lot of what they did, but just that second running back position is just a wasteland. So I just think it's going to be really hard to field a team. And like, of those guys with upside, I think Antonio Gibson is the best bet to produce just because Scott Turner's offense in Washington has a lot of pass catching opportunities for running backs. But even still, he's in a very crowded room. So I don't love that. I like Sheesh's team a little bit more because I'm a big James White fan, especially in half PPR and PPR formats. And I think Cam Akers has some upside. And I like getting Mahomes, and Kelsey is a little bit of a reach at that point, but you have Mahomes and Kelsey together, which is nice. I wouldn't have gone Derrick Henry that early, but I think they get by at running back. And I think their team overall is solid. But there are some flaws in that draft strategy. But if I had to pick one of those two teams to have, it's close. But I think I would go with Sheesh because the running back depth is just better, even though the top running back, Saquon, is much better for team 2.
I agree. So outside of us, there's one team that drafted 4 running backs in the first 5 rounds. That's Team 10. And I really like what Team 10 did. Even though Kenny Drake, I think, has considerable risk because he's never carried a workload for the full season. But he definitely has the upside in that offense. And then you have Kareem Hunt. And I was talking about drafting Kareem Hunt in the 4th round. Jonathan Taylor, who could end up starting, and then Jaken Dobbins as his 5th running back. He could be great down the stretch if he takes over. I like his receiving core as well. No studs, but Calvin Ridley's solid. Robert Woods, he's the number 1 receiver with the Rams. Sterling Shepard with Daniel Jones being in the 2nd year should do well. And then Crowder, in a half PPR, he's not someone I like in standard, but half PPR is fine. And then, he drafted a tight end quarterback late, but Stafford, week 1, it doesn't have an ideal matchup against the Bears, but the Bears defense is not what it was before. And then Darren Waller should do well. What do you think about Team 10?
I love their team. I think that they may have the strongest overall running back core in the league because I know you would have taken Edwards-Helaire, but I think between him and Kenyon Drake, who I'm higher on than most, I love both of those guys. I almost took Kareem Hunt over Todd Gurley in the 3rd round, but wanted someone who was going to carry the full workload. So between those 3 guys, then you add in Taylor and Dobbins to the mix. I think that's just a fantastic group overall. Like you said, the receivers are solid enough. I like, again, getting a Giants guy is always smart this year because they're going to be throwing a lot and they have a few good pass catchers. I think they may have between you, me, and Team 10, I think we're talking those probably 3 of the strongest teams in the league. I think Shoes had a really good draft as well. Getting Josh Jacobs, Le'Veon Bell, Mike Evans is definitely smart. And they drafted Mark Ingram a little earlier than I would have liked probably, but you still have Sony Michel, Latavius Murray, Carlos Hyde behind them, and a ton of good receivers and good sleepers in Jackson and Lazard. So I think they did a really good job. We really drafted with some sharp people this time around. There's a lot of good teams in here that I could see contending.
Yeah, it's a very strong group overall. I mentioned Shoes' draft picks a few times. He took some players I wanted. And I'm not surprised overall to see him draft a great roster. It's funny that he didn't draft a quarterback until round 15. So definitely from my school of thinking where you want to play matchups. And Teddy Bridgewater gets the Raiders in week 1. The Raiders have improved their defense a little bit, with their they improved their linebacking core a great deal. Like their linebacking core is a lot better this year, but their secondary is still questionable and they don't have a good pass rush outside of Max Crosby. Well, we'll see what Cleveland Farrell does. And maybe Farrell takes a big leap. But if not, that's definitely a good matchup for Bridgewater. So, and I think that could be a high scoring game. So I definitely like the strategy. I'm all down for. I'm down for it. As I've discussed before, we haven't really talked about teams 5 through 7. Does anything stand out to you there? It looks like they took a balanced approach, whereas we went running back heavy first. Other teams went receiver heavy first. They went at least 2 running backs in the first 4 rounds, and then at least 1 receiver. Usually, actually, 2 of them went 2 receivers. I like some of the picks, especially Team 5. He took a receiver in the first round, Michael Thomas. But his running back core, I think, is solid. Like Singletary, I think could have a big year. Fournette, especially if he's traded to a team with a better offensive line. Maybe the Steelers. He could blow up. Matt Breida could take over as the starter, and then Justin Jackson's not someone I'm super high on in the 8th round, but he could end up getting a ton of carries. Maybe not a ton of carries, but a decent number of carries with the Chargers. And then I love the receiving core as well. So what do you think about these 3 teams in the middle?
Yeah, I agree. Team 5 is my favorite of the bunch. I think they did a good job of, if you get Michael Thomas, you need to get 2 running backs right after him. And they did that and got 2 really solid ones. And I like their depth picks. I considered Preston Williams when I took Curtis Samuel. I think he's a great sleeper pickup because he was really good as a rookie for Miami. So that worked out well. I like Team 6, Gigi. They had getting Alvin Kamara at 6 was an absolute steal. And then Julio Jones, the next round was great. Melvin Gordon. So they really just right off the bat, the first 3 rounds, they rattled off some big time picks there. I think they did well filling out their roster in a balanced way. They have the two top San Francisco backs. So in all likelihood, they'll have a chance to have a third solid running back. I don't love taking both Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees, but I can also understand why you would do it because both of them were solid values when they were picked. So yeah, I like that team. They also have 2 kickers though, which I'm just noticing. I wonder if that was an auto draft mistake or something, putting kickers on the board and then getting booted out. So don't draft 2 kickers, but overall that team's pretty solid too.
Maybe he's making up for me potentially not drafting a kicker, but it turns out that I did. I agree. For the most part, I think the one blunder Team 6 made, Gigi made, was in round 4 with Mark Andrews. Not that I dislike Andrews. I love Andrews as a talent. You have to be careful though with Andrews because he's a diabetic, and that might mean that he may have to sit out at some point this year. So he's someone I definitely would avoid in the first half of drafts this year just because of that risk. And it's not like you need to draft a tight end early. You can just draft a tight end late. So I that's like the one mistake I see on Team 6, but I love his draft. Otherwise, except for the 2 kickers. Team 7 is, I don't like Dalvin Cook, as talked about before. I don't like David Montgomery, but I like some of his other picks. Tyreek Hill in the middle of the second round seems like a steal. You have Chris Carson, who I wanted in the 3rd round. Allen Robinson, I love. Debo, we talked about. Deshaun Watson is, one of the top quarterbacks. Emmanuel Sanders is someone I've drafted a lot. So outside of those 2 picks I mentioned earlier, I like Team 7 as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the only errors I see with them besides the Dalvin Cook pick is neither you nor I like him. Taking 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends is not a strategy I would usually take. I usually take either 2 quarterbacks or 2 tight ends if the values are crazy, but never both in the same draft. But that's me nitpicking. I think overall that team has just as much potential as anyone else's. But again, if you're going to draft Dalvin Cook early, which again I would recommend against, you have to grab Alexander Mattison as a handcuff. Take him earlier than you need to. It just guarantees that you have a top running back no matter what. So that's definitely something to do if you get Dalvin Cook. Just take Alexander Mattison. Don't let Walt get him in the 8th round like I did.
Yeah, or don't take Dalvin Cook. Maybe that's a strategy as well. I love Team 7's name, by the way. I'm not gonna repeat it because I don't want to get our video taken down or anything. But it's a nice name. So any final thoughts here?
No, I think we've gone over everything with this draft. But like I said earlier, it's a sharp group of people drafting, and I think this one's going to prepare us well for our drafts later on this month or early September.
Yeah, we're a couple days away from August, so that means fantasy draft season's right around the corner. So definitely looking forward to that. And it was great doing another mock draft with you, and looking forward to next week when we do another one. And maybe actually Kenny, I don't think Kenny would be on because he's going on his honeymoon. So congratulations to Kenny for that. So anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I've got plenty of football content coming out. I should have some fantasy football stuff coming soon, so keep an eye out for that. Be tweeting out golf picks, all sorts of fun stuff there. I forgot to tweet out my golf picks again, didn't I? Yes, I did. It's Thursday, and I always forget, but I'll tell you that I will. And Walt and I will be doing some DFS stuff in the coming days too, so I may tweet out a lineup or 2 for baseball or basketball. But yeah, just tweet at me with any sports questions you have. I'm always happy to talk.
Yeah, basketball starts in an hour and 10 minutes. Finally, after 4.5 months, I have a DraftKings lineup for the NBA tonight. If you don't know, DraftKings has a $4 entry contest for $1 million the first. We're not getting paid to say that. I just think it's remarkable that you could enter a $4 contest, and I know it's a super long shot, but you could win the $1 million tonight. So I definitely would recommend doing that if you're willing to spend the $4, and if you have any knowledge at all about the NBA. If you don't, we have a lineup on the site, and it'll be updated before tip off. There's some Zion Williamson news that we don't know yet, so that's going to affect the roster. I think there's another one with the Clippers, but that'll be later on, so we won't know that news before tip off. But still, we will have updates on that. We're taking the Clippers +4 tonight because the Lakers don't really need this game. They're pretty securely in first. So I like that as well. And then fantasy football rankings updated on the site. We're going to update the season previews for all the opt-outs. We're going to do top 100 NFL analysis of that list. I haven't looked at everything, but I heard that Jimmy Garoppolo was rated as a better player than JJ Watt. So I'm looking forward to writing about that. I don't know how that happened. But otherwise, I will talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. I'll talk to you then.
All right, bye.
Bye.